Mr. Stu Smith. How are you today?
Very good, sir. And you?
I am fantastic. And Stu, today we're going to talk about how a book can change your life, unleashing the power of personal stories. We're going to explore the transformative journey of turning personal experiences into part of a powerful book. Today, we uncover the profound impact of storytelling and books on your life and your career. I can hardly wait.
Hey, that's awesome. I
Yeah.
I love a good story. What I like the most though. I will have to say the hero's journey.
Hmm.
It seems like that is the classic hook for me to see someone, you know, have this huge goal, fall short, turn his life around or whatever, and then go back up in the right direction. That's that's something I think we all can relate to in some way
Well, I
or
know
want to.
that's I know that's true because I know your favorite movies are the Rocky movies, like
Oh,
me,
absolutely.
and it's the quintessential thing. I mean, that story, that hero's journey was so good. He lost the fight in the first movie, and if you ask most people if he won, they're like, he won every fight. You know what I mean? So I will tell you a quick story about the Rocky movies and the hero's journey and stuff. This is and hopefully I won't tear up on this, but when I was younger, I was extremely ill. I had a form of cancer that we battled for 4 years.
Mm.
And I remember one summer it was really bad. It was really, really bad. And my mom, I mean, I'd been in the hospital for weeks. And my mom and dad used to spring me every once in a while. They'd get like a day pass. It's kind of like work release from the joint.
Mm.
And so they took me to see a movie, and I didn't know what movie they were going to take me to see. And we went to see Rocky 2. And I had not seen the original Rocky. So this was, this will let you know, this was in 1979, 1980. And we were in the theater, and I was sitting there, and I had all, bandaged up, had the heparin lock. I mean, I
Mm.
was a sickly little kid sitting there, all
Mm.
bandaged up, stuff on my face. And I just remember that fight, and I remember the whole story and how it made me feel as a little kid. And it inspired me that I was just going to fight. I was never going to quit. And I will forever remember that scene at the end when they both fall down and
Oh yeah.
Rocky
Right.
stood
Finally
up,
gets
and
up.
he finally gets up and he won.
No,
And it was,
Adrian.
yeah, we did it. Um, so anyway, story is the most powerful way to make somebody emotional. And by the way, you've heard the thing in the past, people buy on emotion and justify on logic. Well, if you want to buy, you got to make them emotional. And you're not going to make them emotional by making a logical argument. The way you make people emotional is with stories.
Mm.
That is the absolute best way to get a story. And it's either going to be your story or somebody else's story or the story of the product or the story of the development of the product. Just a story has to be involved in order to stir emotion in what we do. Now, I was getting emotional there. I was just keeping under control
Oh,
thinking
I
about
like
that.
that one. That's a huge one.
You need to
And
come down
you're
and
right.
visit sometime, and we'll do like a Rocky marathon. We'll get the kids over and just do a Rocky and
Ooh.
freaking uh, uh, we'll do Rocky and Rambo marathon.
Ooh.
Then you can stand up and give your signature line, which is, "When the hell did we ever become friends with the Russians? Since when are communists our friends?" You know.
I would agree, sir.
And people remember other people's stories too.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. I remember and will always remember the story that you tell about your freshman year in college when you were failing chemistry and you went home and were like all boo-hooing to your mom, and she's like, "That's okay, then just stay home." And you're like, "I can't come home."
I can't quit.
But see, that was your decision. That was the
Yeah.
decision at the bottom of the hero's journey. You were like, "Oh crap. I got to make a decision, and the decision is I got to go fricking pass chemistry. I can't come home."
Yeah.
They have rules and shit.
They had standards. I had to up my game.
Yeah. So that's important, is that stories also make you memorable to others. They'll remember your stories. They don't remember what you taught them 2 days later, but if you tell a hell of a story, they will remember it. And in fact, if your story is good enough, your story will become their story. They will tell
Yes.
your story to other people if it's that good.
Yeah. And it can become theirs. It can inspire them to dig out of the hole.
Yeah, it's a frame of
So,
reference and all kinds of good
yeah.
stuff. Well, man, I mean, this is quite the preamble. What the hell are we talking about today, Stu?
Well, let's start it off with about, putting your story in a book.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, like when you wrote your first book,
Mm-hmm.
how did that change your whole business life, personal life?
Well, it's funny you should ask, because I happen to have a copy of the end result. This is the physical version of my first book that actually we turned into a tape program and I used as this big thing to get business. But writing this book was, and publishing it myself, even though it took me 4 years to write it, it totally changed my perception of myself. And it also changed my business because I discovered how to use this as a tool to make a whole bunch more money because of the book, than with the book. Because I had the book, I could approach for sale by owners and get them to list with me, as opposed to trying to sell copies of the book and get somebody to publish it. So this journey of how long it took me to actually write this book also inspired me to figure out faster and faster and faster and faster and better ways to write a book quicker and easier, and then to turn around and help others to do the same. But
So
this is the one that started it all.
how'd that change your life? What did that exactly do for you?
Well, it gave me the ultimate authority with my target audience, which was actual people that could do business with me. Now, it had halo effect too, because the fact that I had written the book, not only did it give me credibility, but also I had people contact me, like somebody at the New York Times. I was contacted, gave them a bunch of interview help and other stuff, and then I was in a New York Times article. I then leveraged the fact that I had written this book to put it on a desk in front of a newspaper editor and deputy editor, and pitched them on me being a newspaper columnist for them. And then I was able to take that to becoming internationally syndicated. So it was the seed from which all of this grew right here. It all grew from this.
That's awesome. And so, how about the time of life at where this was, right? Let's think about, like, where was the internet at this time? Were
Well, the
people
internet,
even did everybody have email, right? Did people have their own website yet?
well, I
Like,
finished this in 1996. So no, I didn't even know what the internet was. I had to have my sister teach me what email was.
there you go.
And so but then having this done, talking to somebody one day and saying, "Hey, you think I could sell that on the internet?" And he had absolutely no business telling me yes or no, but he wanted to sell web hosting. So he's like, "Yeah, I bet you could." In his mind, he just wanted 150 bucks a month in web hosting. And so,
That's a crazy price.
yeah, but that's what it was. It was like
I know.
150 bucks a month for
I
like
remember.
250 megabytes of data transfer. I mean, it was nothing. And everything was on dial up, but again, that was the nucleus that of the whole thing. It's just all the, and then the ability to drive traffic, and then getting media attention, and then creating back ends and turning it into a funnel, and learning how to write sales copy and email teasers and ads and all that stuff. All of that came from writing the book and then needing to go sell it.
Yeah. The one thing I'd like to add, though,
Mhm.
is that was the catalyst to it all. But
Mhm.
also, I think one of the most important pieces of this journey for you has been the willingness to evolve along with it, the changing technology, which was every year it was having to learn something all over again.
Oh yeah, on a new application. That's kind of where we are now with AI and everything else. We're back. We went through kind of a phase there where everything. I mean, it was like the patent office in 1890. All that's been invented has been invented. It's like, okay, we got high speed internet, we got video, we got full stream video, we got decode, encode, all that stuff. I mean, it's just kind of like,
Yep. Everybody's
and then
wasting their time on social media, not worried about anything else.
exactly. And now
Yeah.
AI just came and kicked it all over. And now all those aspects of it, from everything from site creation, advertising, video creation, content creation, copywriting, conversion, all those things now have been completely and totally disrupted by AI. And it is like 1997 all over again.
All right. Well, tell me this. Enough talking about you, Jim.
I need a Kleenex, Stu. You can ask me, but I'm walking over here. I guess I got myself a little bit too worked up with the little story, and now
With
I
the
got to
Rocky story.
blow my dude. That was a real story.
I know.
That's, I
Hey,
mean,
tell
yeah.
me this, Jim.
Uh-huh.
Can you share a similar story of how you know someone changed their path uh, by after writing or reading a personal story?
So, okay, I'll pull from the top of the pile on my desk. My buddy Suzanne Hetz, who is, well, she's retired now, but she was a huge voice in the animal behavior world. And so she had been struggling to get people into her membership site, needed a catalyst product, a front end. And we helped her to write this book, 12 Terrible Dog Training Mistakes Owners Make that ruin their dog's behavior and how to avoid them. She wrote this book, leveraged this into getting a whole bunch of people into her membership site, and then leveraged it with media and was able to actually be on TV, be in a TV series and a series of TV episodes in her regional market that gave her the ultimate credibility. Plus, she leveraged it to get a whole bunch of people in her membership site, and just a whole bunch of other great things happened because she wrote this book. It was like even though she was a PhD and already a published author, by purposely using a book, sharing her story, sharing the stories of her customers, things she had seen, she was able to leverage that into getting crazy exposure that she never would have gotten otherwise, that took her business to a whole new level.
So tell me, why is it so important to have a personal story that you share with your audience?
So one of the things that when people are looking at you, they're always asking why you. Now they're not. I mean, some of them are chuckleheads and they're like, "Well, why? You know, why you? Why should I even pay attention to you?" But subconsciously, people are asking that question: why should I pay attention to you? Why should I buy from you? Why should I pay attention to this product? Why are you qualified to have created this product or this training or this service or this software or whatever it is that you are out there purveying? And so in the end, the only thing that makes us different is our story. So when I tell the story, somebody asks a question, okay, Jim, why are you qualified to help me write a book? Okay, well, because I wrote my first book in 1996, got rejected by 40 different publishers, had to figure out how to sell it on my own, figured out that it was more valuable as a business tool than actually trying to publish it and live off royalties. And then I went down this entrepreneurial publishing lane for now 27 years. And so I've been there, done that, helped tens of thousands of people understand what to do, personally trained thousands of people. And that's why you should listen to me. Then people ask, okay, well, why should I listen to you when it comes to AI? Well, interestingly enough, I have written and published tons and tons of books. I was also a syndicated newspaper columnist for 10 years. I have also written multiple sales letters that have hit 7 and even 8 figures in sales. I've been selling online for almost 25 years, almost 20, no, 20, damn, 20.
Yeah.
Wow. A long time, 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. 27. that's why I'm qualified not only to teach you that, but then over the years I've developed not once but twice the web's number one copywriting and content creation software, and then plugged AI into it. So that's why you should listen to me, because I have a unique combination of skills, experience, and expertise and results to support what I'm doing there. So now I could tell the story that way. I can recount the story of, and we'll mess around with one of the genies and show how to actually tell your story. But your story tells people why you. But what it also does, when you know your story, when you have defined your story as it relates to your topic, your audience, what you're selling, it also sells you on you.
Hmm.
You know, sometimes one of the things that people really struggle with is what's called imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome basically means that you don't believe that you should be doing something. And a lot of times that's caused by either discounting or ignoring our own story. So when I'm feeling kind of down, and I do every once in a while, and it's like, hey, who the hell am I to teach people how to do stuff? Well, I don't know. I bootstrapped my way out of a freaking trailer park with a single book, taught myself how to write sales copy, did all these other things where I was able to adapt over the years, learn something, teach something, and help people actually get results instead of talking BS. And so, yeah, I actually do know what I'm talking about. And when I don't know, I either know someone who can help me figure it out, or I can figure it out myself. So
There you go.
your story, you know, it's kind of like, to other people would look at your story and be like, "Why are you even doubting yourself? Where the hell's that even coming from?" And
Yeah.
I know it never happens with Stu, because Stu's bulletproof. Man, if you did this, he's got the S on his chest, man.
That is not true, Jim. I
And
I, I get the re-attitude or the attitude adjustment from my wife often.
well, that's different. That's a
You know,
different story,
no,
because
no, no,
she
no,
has a different story about you than you have
no.
about her.
I'm not talking about like I have a bad attitude. I'm just saying
Uh-huh.
sometimes I will say something that sounds like I don't need to do that. You know, I probably shouldn't do. You know, something like that. She goes, "What do you mean? That's absolutely what you can do." You know,
Right.
so it's you know I shouldn't charge this much. You know, so
Oh yeah, and
it happens all the time.
I've
Yeah,
jumped your ass about that too.
yeah,
But that's because you're not. It's one thing. It's one thing to be sold on your own story. It's very different to believe your own press releases. So
ah,
my dad used to tell me, he said, you know, when you're really going to be in
that's fair.
trouble is when you start believing your own press releases, which means you believe the bullshit.
That's really good.
And your story, your authentic story, is who you are. The
Right.
press releases is the spin that you put out there to you know,
Fair enough.
the sales copy is one thing, your authentic story is another. So like, and that's, don't confuse the two,
Nah, that's very helpful.
you know. But based on your story and what you can do and going after the right audience, you absolutely should be even charging even more than you do, Stu, when we're talking
Yes.
about the guys my age and stuff and the people you
Oh,
should be
sure.
going after.
Yeah.
Okay, but your story supports that. But see, you're not hearing, listening, paying attention to, focusing on the same story about you that I am.
Right.
Does
I
that
got
make
you.
sense?
Yes,
So
absolutely.
anyway,
Absolutely.
that's why your story is so important.
No, I
That's
love it.
that's that's why it sells you on you, and it sells other people on you. Answers the question why, and it also, the big word, the D word, it differentiates you from everyone else. Everything you sell, everything you do, everything you produce can be cloned, ripped off, AI'd, or otherwise copied, pirated, or whatever. The one thing that can't be duplicated about you is your story, your unique experiences and the way that you communicate it to people in your books, in your marketing, in your speeches, in your classes, in your courses. This is the thing that makes you different, and it creates a context for all of the things that you are teaching or selling in your book. And also, your stories make things stick. This is what makes ideas stick. Gives a context to information so that it can stick. They're going to remember the story, and then by extension, they're going to remember the lesson. And if they remember the lesson, then they might actually apply the frickin' lesson, as opposed to it just being some bunch of BS that, that's just more data. I always remember looking back in college, even the stuff that I learned and that it's actually stuck with me was the stuff that had stories to go with it. I think that's why I gravitated to history as opposed to statistics or other things like that that had absolutely no stories involved with them whatsoever. But, funny enough, when I read the book Freakonomics, or when I read the book How to Lie with Statistics, and it had cool context in it, I mastered the stuff almost instantly because of the
Nice.
stories. So that's why stories are so important.
I like it, Jim. So tell me, let's take a big picture. Why do you think personal stories have such impact when shared in a book, as an example?
So I think that it's a few things, all right? And when it comes to a personal story, in some ways people are just nosy.
Uh,
They're nosy. People are nosy. They want to, like they gossipy stuff like that. A personal story also makes you a real person. So we tend to think about authors and experts, they're way out there. And then I know this has probably happened to you at conferences and stuff. People come up to you like, "Hey, you're you're Jim Edwards." I'm like, "So, okay." Went on a cruise over Thanksgiving. Coming out of the spa, walking down the big hallway, Jim over here, all right? This lady comes walking down the hallway and she's like, "Hey, you're Jim Edwards." And I'm like, "Yeah." And I start backing up because I'm like, "What the hell? This isn't like a conference." And she's like, I mean, this, no kidding. However many thousands of people on this boat, this lady's like, "Hey, you're Jim Edwards." And I'm like, she's like, "I'm your customer. I loved your book. I bought your Wizards.
oh,
That's
cool.
awesome." And she's like, it was like she felt like she knew me because of the stories and the stuff that I had shared, as opposed to I was just some guy that sold something. And so we got a selfie and she was all excited and all that good stuff. And so it not only makes you real, but your stories make you relatable.
Mm.
And you got to be real and relatable, especially in today's world with social media and all that other stuff where people don't feel like there should be a wall between you and them.
Yeah.
So that's
Felt,
why
yeah.
you want to share those stories. Plus, again, back to makes you unique, makes, this is what you got. What you got is you. Ultimately, all you're selling is you. And you sell yourself with your stories. That's
Yeah.
why.
Nah, that's a great answer. How about an example how telling your story affected your sales in a big way?
I think one of the stories that I have told over and over and over that has made a huge difference in my sales of all kinds of different stuff, from copywriting secrets to product placement, um, to courses and other stuff, is telling the story of how I spent 4 years trying to write my book, trying to get it published. And then from 1997 to 2001, the struggle of trying to sell the thing online. And from 1997 to 2001, it was a money hobby. And a hobby means usually there's more money going out than coming in. And over the course, I figured out how to put up a website. I figured out how to drive search engine traffic. I got really good at driving traffic, but my sales were still kind of just okay. Then I was introduced to the idea of a one-page sales letter, which I had been aware of because people were using them to get me to send them money, but I had never discovered how I could do one of those. So then when I discovered that, and the person that taught it to me didn't really go into a whole bunch of detail, but I was ready for the outline of the parts that he laid out at a conference. And I was like, got it. Got it. And I went back to my room and I took my 40-page website, condensed it down to a long form one-page sales letter, got rid of a whole bunch of stuff, turned some of the stuff I've been giving away for free into bonuses when they bought. And literally overnight, my sales went up 250%.
Damn.
So it was by learning how to put words on paper on purpose to get people to buy that my life was changed, because those sales increasing by 250% created enough cash flow to cover a house payment, 2 car payments, and an electric bill. That was what enabled me to move out of the trailer park. So when I tell that story, people are like, well, crap, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
And then I did it again and again and again and again and again and again. And that's pretty much what I've been doing for the last 24 years, is doing that again and again and again and again and again. And learned a whole lot along the way. And I'd love to share that with you.
Yeah.
In whatever product it is that I'm saying. See, Stu's ready to buy. He's like, damn, I'm getting my credit card out.
Well, I was interested in you sharing the process of building a story.
Okay.
Like, what are, for someone interested in writing their story, what are the first steps, they should take?
Well, there's a couple different ways that you can write a story. Okay. So one is the hero's journey, and that's basically the story that I just told you. So the hero's journey, the way we use it, goes through basic steps. Okay. You start out here, and usually there's a decision. Okay. Something happens in the classic sense called the call to action. But for what we're doing, there's a decision, there's an event, there's something that happens, and immediately something bad happens. It's like, hey, I'm going to do this. Nah, you fall off the cliff. Somebody punch you right in the side. Oh, you want to do that? Life punches you in the head. So then you start trying to do better, but it gets worse until finally you hit rock bottom. I was 3,000 pounds overweight. I was bankrupt, living in a trailer with a leaky roof and a bad electrical system. And then at some point right here, there's another decision. There's a decision that comes as either the result of meeting someone or being introduced to an idea, or both. Okay. Something happens, there's an event, you make a decision, you meet someone, there's a decision, you decide something, there's a decision. Okay. I decided I was going to get real damn good at writing sales copy. And so then once that decision is made, there's some sort of massive action, which usually is glossed over a little bit just because, people understand you had to have done something. So then you reach the thing that you were striving for in the beginning. All right. But you also realize, so whatever it was, I want to have a successful online business. I want to lose weight. I want to be in shape. I want to, have a happy marriage, all that stuff. But then you realize that there's more to it, and you actually climb further up the hill, and you become Superman or Superwoman, super person, if you're into pronouns. And that is where you are self-actualized and want to turn around and help the people that are over here like you were. That's the story. That's the origin story. That's the hero's journey. That's the epiphany bridge, all that stuff. And then if you want to take it just a little bit further, you as super person up here across the hill, your product, your service, your coaching, your software, whatever it is intended to build a bridge across that chasm so that people can avoid all this stuff. Or if they are down in the valley of despair, it builds a bridge they can climb out and join you on the other side. That is what that story does. Now, that's one way of doing it. This is great in a sales letter. This is great at the beginning of a book. This is great in the introduction of your book and your first chapter, in your podcast introduction. When someone asks you, hey, tell us your story. I mean, everybody's telling their hero's journey.
Yeah.
Either consciously or subconsciously. And what you really want to do is tell it by design. It can be long, it can be short. It all depends on the context of the time allotted for doing said thing. Now, the problem is that you can't always tell this story format with every single thing. Because when you do that, it's like, hey, Jim, tell me the story about how you were, how you figured out how to do AI. And it's like, well, Stu, it started back then. It's like, no. I don't need your life. Listen to me. I don't need your life story. I just need to know the story about this event. Now, when you do that, there's another story formula that you can use, and it's called the 6 C's. Okay. Now, we're not going to go into crazy detail on this right here, but I will give you the basic thing. Okay. So first, you got to give the context. This is where you kind of lay out the background of the story. And you introduce, man, let me tell you a quick story about the time this happened. Okay. Then you got to introduce the characters. So my buddy and I were doing this. I was at this. This is the thing. Again, think of a story like an accordion. Or a slinky. It can be this long and it's still a slinky, or it's this long and it's a slinky, because it's a slinky. For fun, it's a wonderful toy. Remember that? Now burn in your brain. Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
Next, there's got to be some conflict. What is there got to be? Conflict. Because this is what gets people emotional. Oh, crap, what happened? This is what draws them in. Physically, even. They'll start leaning in. Oh, yeah. Let me tell you about the time I got punched in the face because I opened my big mouth, took 30 stitches in my face, and learned a lesson I'll never forget. That's a real story, too. Okay? Never tell mama jokes to a drunk guy with his friends. Okay. Then there's some sort of a climax. So there's conflict that's happened, and then it all comes to a head, right? It's all got to come to a head, and then there needs to be some sort of closure. The story has to come to an end. It's not the never-ending story that never ends. Don't be the old man storyteller. I have to remind myself of that all the time. As I get older, my stories get longer and longer. I don't know why that is. And then finally, you have your conclusions or conclusion. This is basically the moral of the story. This is where you tell people what to take away from the story. So now if we want to tell a story, like by knowing this, I can tell somebody else's story.
Take notes, people. Take notes.
Or grab the screen.
That's good stuff.
I'm going to tell Stu's story about failing chemistry.
I failed more than chemistry that year, Jim.
Okay, but you didn't actually fail, right?
Or no, I didn't. I was almost failing.
Okay.
Almost
so let me tell you about the time my buddy Stu almost failed chemistry and got kicked out of the U.S. Naval Academy. So he was at the academy and was really struggling with study habits and the workload and those kinds of things. And he was super, super homesick at the same time. The problem was he was failing chemistry and close to failing some other stuff. But instead of bearing down, asking for help, and figuring it out, he kind of retreated into a poopy pants mentality. It all came to a head when he went home for Thanksgiving and was almost in tears with his mom telling her about what was going on. To his surprise, his mom looked at him and said, "Well, just come home. Just don't go back." And in that instant, he made a decision that I can't come home. I got to handle this. So he went back, he got the help, he dug it out, was able to pass, learned a whole bunch of new lessons, and was able to carry it all the way through to graduating from the Naval Academy. And he took that perseverance and turned that into a career as a SEAL officer. What's the moral of the story? Sometimes, and then it's whatever you want the moral to be. Do we want the moral to be never quit? Or do we want the moral to be sometimes you need to talk to somebody that you love and trust, and you need to realize you need to bear down and do so? Whatever the conclusion is you want from that story, in order to help you in the situation, you tell them the moral of the story. You don't let them come up with it on their own, but they'll feel like they came up with it on their own because of the way you tell them. So the moral of the story in this case was that Stu's mom, so the moral of the story is sometimes the people we love will let us off the hook when we shouldn't let ourselves off the hook. And the same thing holds true for you and your diet and your exercise this holiday season. Your loved ones are going to look at you and say, "You know what? A little extra pie ain't going to hurt.
Live a
We got
little.
this candy. Live a little. You work so hard. You work out more than anybody else." This is truth. You work out more than anybody else we know. Yeah, and I'm also not fat like everyone else we know. So it's so be careful what you do this holiday season. And I like to invite you to,
Mhm.
I mean, dude, you
No,
can make
that's
the
really
story mean anything you want, but when you think of this in terms of context, characters, conflict, climax, closure, and then the conclusion you want them to come to.
genius.
Wouldn't it be cool if there was a genie that kind
I
of
was
helps
just
you do
about
these
to. I
things?
was just about to say that, Jim. There's got to be a genie for this. You know what it's reminding me of?
What's
The
that?
my story genie.
The My Story genie.
Yeah,
Holy crap, you're right. I think we should go do that.
we should do a demo.
Okay. So, if you've ever struggled to tell your story when it comes to especially your origin story or your hero's journey or the background behind something or why you do what you do with something, then the My Story Genie is absolutely going to help you with that. And I am going to share that with you right now. So, how does the My Story Genie work? Well, basically, it follows the hero's journey by extracting a whole bunch of information from you, by asking you questions, and helps build the story, and then it literally writes it for you. But the cool thing is that you can tell different types of stories. So, you can sell a funny, a serious, a heartfelt, inspirational, or cautionary tale. So, in this one, which I have already loaded in here, is telling the story of how I got fired from my job after moving out of a trailer park for 7 years. And I can use this, again, I can use the moral of this for pretty much any purpose that I want. But it's all aimed at my target audience of entrepreneurs. Who's the main character? What happened? When and where did it happen? Give the details and background. What was the turning point? What was the transformation? What was the result? What's the lesson everyone should take away? Then you can tell it the writing style you want, and then the perspective. So I can actually tell this about somebody else, or I can tell it about myself. So if this is about me, then I want to tell it in first person. If I'm telling a story trying to resonate with the reader, then I might do it in second person. And let's say I was telling a story about Stu, then I could do it in third person. So I'm going to do this in first person just to show you how this comes out. And it'll tell it a couple different ways. It'll do it formulaic or creative, but I want to show you how all these different variables make this so much better than depending on the chat GPT. It's night and day. Okay. So I won't do the whole thing, but I remember what that day like it was yesterday, the day that changed my life forever. It was June 2001. I was driving home from work, feeling the weight of the world on my shoulders. I'd just been fired from my job, and it felt like my entire world was crashing down around me. I had only just moved into a real house after living in a trailer park for 7 years, and I hadn't even made the first mortgage payment yet. The timing couldn't have been worse. I had been at odds with my boss over a policy regarding product returns, and it all came to a head when another employee who had a personal vendetta against me falsely accused me of disrespecting my boss. Now that's pretty dang good.
Hey,
That
Jim,
because
I love that. In fact, what if I didn't though? What happens if you whack that button again?
well, I would go up and change something. So um let's change this to like National Enquirer, and I want to change this to third person and see if it'll tell it. And then I'm going to change this also from inspirational to cautionary. Okay. And I'll
Okay.
change this from me, Jim Edwards, to just Jim Edwards.
I don't think I've ever done cautionary. I should do that.
What's the worst thing that'll happen? You'll spend a wish, Stu.
Yeah.
You get 200 a day. So let's see what it does. All right. So it was June 2001 when the unimaginable happened to Jim, just after he and his wife had moved into their first house after living in a trailer park for 7 years. Jim had just started to settle into his new home and hadn't even made the first house payment when he faced the shock of a sudden job termination. Despite being at work, Jim's boss and him had an agreement about refund policies. Later, an employee who didn't like Jim told the boss that Jim was in the back room flipping him off. It seemed that Jim's boss may have been jealous because everyone was calling the office to talk to Jim and not him, since they were both named Jim. So right there in rush hour traffic, Jim's boss fired him over the phone on a Friday. By the way, side note, totally true. That was back when you paid by the minute. So for yourself. So I literally paid to get fired.
Mm.
Devastated, Jim went home and told his wife about the lost job. She was sympathetic, but told him he had 30 days to get his internet business off the ground or he'd have to go get a job at Lowe's. True story. Jesus. Last thing ever needs to happen. Suddenly, Jim found himself working his butt off 18 hours a day, networked like crazy, lined up affiliates, blah, 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 within 2.5 hours. 2.5 years. So the lesson for all entrepreneurs is clear. When one door closes, another opens. It's up to you to seize the opportunity. Those are two totally different. I mean, it's the same story, but it's told totally different perspective.
Yep.
If we were to change this to, I don't know what would happen if we changed it humorous, or funny, because it wasn't funny, but let's just see real quick. And we'll change this to humorous too. I'm going to see if they can find any humor in this, because I might want to punch the genie if it makes fun of me, but let's see what it does. So the key is whatever you feed into it. Fired from my job and still caught in rush hour traffic. My heart dropped as I listened to my boss say those harrowing words. To make matters worse, I just moved into a real house after years of living in a trailer park and hadn't even made the first payment yet. Talk about timing, am I right? In a daze, I told my wife the bad news. I told my wife the bad news and braced myself for disappointment, but instead she gave me an ultimatum. Blah, blah, blah. No pressure or anything, I thought sarcastically. So I worked my butt off 18 hours a day. I was like a caffeine-infused Energizer bunny. It made my mission to network and line up affiliates like it was going out of style, or I made it my mission. I even got a part-time job to replace my full-time income within those 30 days. I replaced my entire income. Okay.
No, I
So
like
that's
it.
a little bit different. I don't know why the
It's
hell
hard to make a joke about that one, but it did a pretty good job for a machine.
it did. And so my point is that I don't know what that message was it was giving me, but that right there, what we're after and what this does a great job of is giving you that first draft. So it gets all the parts, puts them all in, then you can tinker with all the different toggle switches and it will spit out the same story, but with all kinds of different spins and all kinds of different angles and language and stuff, so you can dial it in for your purpose. So finishing up this demo, what is the purpose of the story? That's what you need to ask. But what is the context of the story? Where am I using this? So if I'm using this in a book where I'm trying to make a serious point, then I'm going to use a serious angle and I'm going to tell it in a serious way. But let's say I wanted to tell this story. Now I'm 10 years, 20 years, 24 years away from that story. Okay. I want to tell it with a little bit of humor from stage or something. Then that thing, like, nothing like, whatever it said there about where it said, am I right? That actually was pretty good. I could see myself saying that from stage.
Yeah.
I hadn't even made the first payment right. I mean, talk about timing. Am I right? I mean, that's like, that would get a laugh. And that's great timing, right? And so really a cool tool to help you with being able to do that.
All right, Jim, next obvious question.
Mhm.
Most of us feel that, we're not good enough writers to write a book. How does the My Story Genie assist in, those with little to no writing experience?
Well, I think ultimately, if somebody wants to write a book, it's not about being a writer now. It's about communicating ideas and your story and using frameworks. So the great thing that this genie and all the other genies that we have that help you to write your books and write the parts of your books, it's first learning the framework, which I teach you, how to put the parts together. Just like a sales letter has 13 parts, a book has specific parts that are arranged in a certain way to create the outcome of a book. And so it's understanding the frameworks, understanding the parts, understanding it's communication and not writing, and then using the tools to create that really good first draft. So instead of you going through and writing it, you're actually just curating whatever it is that you have created. So it's a flip. Instead of writing a book by sitting down and gutting it out at the keyboard, now writing a book is about technology and strategy. It's about leveraging tools. The same thing as back in the day when someone wanted to build a house, they would go out into the woods with an axe and they would cut down logs and then they would trim the branches off the logs and then notch the logs and turn it into a log cabin. That's what you do when you do stuff the manual way. That's like writing a book from scratch. Now, if you want to build a house, you can do prefab stuff. They even have this thing that looks like a crane, but it's actually a giant 3D printer that will print your house on a foundation. I've watched it on YouTube. It's amazing. That's called technology. Oh, and by the way, the house is better designed, more stable, more just doesn't leave anything out. Now, again, by having a strategy and using technology, you can write a book like 3D printing a house.
Nice.
And nobody looks at that 3D house and go, oh my God, oh my God, you didn't write that every word from scratch. And you didn't build that house by driving every single nail by hand. I mean, I even think about when all of us worked construction at one point, working our way through school. Well, you didn't. They told you what to do in the summer, but
It's not true.
you didn't have a job.
In high school, I worked in a watermelon field.
Okay.
Old watermelons.
There you go. I worked construction, and I remember in the late 80s, the way somebody framed a house was with a tool belt, with a big pouch of nails, and a big old hammer. And you saw these guys that looked like they had been raised on coffee and crack. And all they did, and one hand was spindly and wiry, and they had this one arm that looked like Arnold Schwarzenegger, okay, from swinging that hammer. And it's like bing, 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 bing. And that's how they framed houses with that. When they framed my garage, a little skinny dude and another really fat dude went along with these nail guns and like bip, 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 bip. They're doing more in a minute than other guys used to do in 15 minutes, 15 times faster.
Yeah.
Does that make the house less valuable? It costs a lot more.
Yeah.
So my point is that technology and strategy is how you get stuff done better and faster. And that's what we're talking about here, especially with writing a book.
No, I love that. Hey, there seem to be a lot of misconceptions too with book writing. So how does the My Story Genie address all the challenges that we have when it comes to writing a book?
Well, I think what the My Story Genie, and then another one that if you want to see, if we got time, I'll show you the Amazing Story Genie. And then also, I think just there's another genie that I want to create, uh, that I think's gonna that I think's gonna really help. I'll add that to my list. But with all this stuff, what it comes down to is how can I get from zero to first draft as fast as possible? And specifically when it comes to the story genie, is a lot of times it's hard to tell your own story. And especially when you want to tell a story as it relates to text or to a lesson or to something that you have in the books. Like you create the content for the book and then really ought to have a story here, but I'm kind of tired and I'm kind of busy and I just want to get this done and I don't know how to tell a story and it sounds kind of goofy and other stuff like that. So specifically where it helps you is being able to tell that story quickly and in a way that works and supports what you're trying to teach in a chapter. So it's speed, it's effectiveness, and it's doing the stuff that you know you need to do, but rarely do because, well, the information is pretty good and I need to get on to the next thing, which is what most people do.
You know what I've noticed, Jim, when I'm
What's that?
using the genies
Uh-huh.
is I, when I first start, that's when I'm having the most trouble, right? With my story that I'm trying to write. But
Right.
the questions start prompting creativity.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, I can answer these. Boom, boom, boom. Whereas if I started from zero and tried to write it first draft, I would probably have some form of writer's block 3 or 4 different times in
Right.
that process. Whereas I have a little bit at first, I have an idea what I want to write about, but I'm not sure how I'm going to do it. The questions like boom, 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 and then push that button, first draft done.
Right.
Now I just got to edit,
Right.
add a little bit of soul.
Exactly.
Love it.
And the first draft is the hardest draft. So the faster you can go from zero to first draft and conserve your energy and your psychic powers and everything else that you're trying to do, the better off you are. Because if you expend all that energy and effort and everything to get that first draft done, then there's nothing left for the polishing and the soul phase.
So, what are the steps that listeners need to take, um, to start their book writing journey, and how can my story genie assist them?
So here's what you need to do. You need to really think to yourself, okay, and it's like it's a starts with a visualization exercise. Okay. If you had a book, how would that change your life and business? How would that help you to do what you do better, faster, more effectively, help you to share your gift with the world? So, like my book, this book, Selling Your Home Alone book, ultimately turned into helping me become the top listing agent in my office. I mean, with zero advertising expense, by the way. I didn't spend any
Damn.
money to advertise anything. So, how would having a book change your life? That's the number one thing that you need to do. Then you need to visualize it as done, not just like a someday, maybe I will, but I'm going to do this. Now, I need you to visualize yourself having done it. What does it feel like to hand people your book? What does it feel like to stand on stage and show a picture of your book? What does it feel like to have people calling you and texting you and emailing you and asking you to come speak or come train or come be on their podcast because of that book? See yourself mentioning your book, promoting your book, signing your book. Then the next step after that, and you really feel it. Then the next step after that is to commit that it's not going to be an off in the future thing anymore. You're going to do it and you're going to do it now. And finally, third step, go to WriteYourBook.ai and sign up because our WriteYourBook.ai challenge has helped hundreds of people go from zero to book done and published on Amazon in 2 weeks or less. And we've done it hundreds of times with AI doing all the heavy lifting. In fact, this book right here, I wrote with the exact same tools during the challenge. So If you're serious about doing it, you need to go over to WriteYourBook.ai and sign up. Never been a better time, never been a better opportunity, never been a more proven way of getting it done. And it seems like, I see a lot of people now coming out, oh, we'll show you how to write a book, blah, 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 blah. Nobody has our combination of training and tools and track record that we do. If you want to get it done, go to WriteYourBook.ai and sign up.
I agree. Now, how about for those who are just hesitant to even start writing a book? What what final piece of advice would you have for someone who just like getting in their own way of writing a book, or maybe not even thinking about writing a book?
If you want to survive in the knowledge economy, if you want to not just survive but thrive and grow and and differentiate yourself from everybody else, you've got to have a book. Even if you're in just a super micro niche, even if you never sell a copy on Amazon, the ability to stand on your podcast, the ability to stand in front of a group of people, the ability to send a copy of your book in the mail to someone that's thinking about hiring you to be a coach, like if you get an inquiry or something. And when you're competing against others, this is one of the biggest, if not the biggest things that establishes you as an authority and is an immediate differentiator between you and your competition. So even if you never thought about it before, if you're having any competitive difficulties with others, which by the way, things are more competitive than they've ever been.
Yeah.
If you struggle to explain why you're different, if you would benefit by being able to explain to people your methods, your philosophy, your ideas, your story, your background, your frameworks, a book is still and will continue forever to be the best way to do that. That's why you need a book. Go to WriteYourBook.ai. Sign up.
Yeah,
Your
love it. And
family will your family will thank you.
I promise you this, if you get a book done,
Mhm.
this is going to motivate you and give you a little more confidence, a lot of confidence, to maybe creating a website around that book.
Oh
And
yeah.
then within that website, you have a blog where people ask you questions and you start creating this community. You put a newsletter within that website. Next thing you know, you have this self priming pump that is really all started because you wrote this book.
Yep. And the next logical step with that communication and that community is for you to publish courses related to your book, because that's where the big money's at.
Oh,
The
yeah.
big money, this is the seed, the nucleus, but the big money comes from selling 100, 200, $500 courses related to your book and coaching. If you're a speaker, you need to be an author. If you're a coach, you need to be an author, and vice versa. If you're an author, authors naturally do coaching and speaking. It's the trifecta of awesomeness.
Hmm.
Okay, and that's the truth. Authors should speak and coaches need to speak and be authors, and the same thing. Speakers need to coach and be authors.
Damn, Jim. Every time we do a show like this, I always get another piece of my brain thinking about future shows or future coaching programs. You just had that triangle of speaker, author, coach,
Uh huh.
right? We could do that. That's its own course, right? And then you had this, the 6 C's. That's its own course, or at worst, another podcast show.
Yeah. Absolutely. And it becomes a genie. I need to do the 6C genie.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I got that. I got it, Stu. Don't worry.
That's awesome. Yeah.
So, okay. Well, we did what we needed to do.
I think
I
so.
would just encourage everybody, go check out WriteYourBook.ai. Based on when we're doing this, like give it, new year, new you, write a book. New year, new you, write a book. You want to be an authority, you want to have unstoppable authority in your niche, got to write a book. Or if you want to expand your authority in your niche, you need to write another book. If you've got a general book, you need to write one on a very specific and focused topic. In fact, that's what we're doing on this next challenge. We're going to be writing what internally we're calling a treasure map book. So this is where you're going to write a book that teaches somebody how to get a result in a step by step by step fashion. So we got new genies, new goodies, all kinds of new. So if you've done it with us before and you're wondering what's going to be different about it, it's going to be a different set of genies, different type of books. So it's going to help you to add to your shelf. I have written a number of books. You want to have a selection.
Oh, Brad just said, new year, new book.
That's right. New year, new book, new you. All right. Appreciate you, Stu. Great job.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Susan, for running it in the background. Thank you, all of those who are here with us, especially since we are in Facebook jail. So we're glad that you were able to find us on the various other platforms besides those run by the Zucks. Take care, everybody. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.